This is Father Bonaventure Chapmen.
And this is Father Gregory Pine.
And welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can go and leave a monthly donation. Also, please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are consuming your social media. Is that what this is? Social media? That's not bad. Folks, that was the third time.
Yeah, that's pretty darn good.
But we're getting there. So,
dude, that's awesome. Wherever you consume your social media.
you used to consume one time. I don't know.
43?
I'd caught myself in like subscribe and podcast loop. And I had to try to find a synonym.
No, the thing is, because like the nouns are such.
Yeah.
If you get one wrong, it
ramifies.
Yeah,
exactly. You're in trouble.
Ramifies is the word.
Yeah.
They are concatenated distinct nouns because there isn't a wide way of referring to a podcast by a substantive.
Not a worldwide way.
Not a worldwide way for sure. You can call it a podcast or you can call it a show, but even show is a stretch.
Yeah.
If you start calling it like a radio program, people know that you're from Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, when's the last time you've had when someone gives a website and they go, "Oh, just look up www." That is
just on PBS, I think. But now they have no funding, so maybe they're going to have to shorten those.
That's great. That is meeting someone who's that, and you go, "Oh, is that HTTPS?"
Yes, I don't know if they know about the S's though, because that's something that kind of came online only like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
well,
it's right.
secure.
Oh, secure.
Yeah, because it just used to be HTTP.
That's true.
//
www.snuggleify.com.
The
www.net. Yeah, or something. Yeah. Oh man,
which brings us back to Homestar Runner. As
it
do all
does.
things.
Okay, so because this episode is on eco-justice, I wanted to start though with when was the first time that you were conscious that the environment was the environment?
So I'd say 7th grade, maybe.
Because it's different than like the world, right? Like the environment is a particular concept that like stuff around you outside and trees falls under.
Yeah.
And there's like some points. Okay, so 7th grade that was the first time. And what was the event? Was that an Earth Day celebration or something?
That was environmental science with Mrs. Strykowski, who was a great teacher.
Okay.
But like I think I had science stuff before that, but I remember my science modules being mostly like ocean deep. It was like a specific kind of scientific enterprise, and it was mostly learning about weird animals doing weird things. You know, think of like, what was the name of that Discovery Channel documentary that came out in like 2006? Planet Earth.
Planet Earth.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, whoa. That was my engagement with the environment up until that point. It was kind of like, whoa.
Okay.
But things got really alarmist in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Because it was like, here's the thing, kids. The ozone layer, gonna be gone in a week. The ocean's gonna be poisonous in a day.
Yeah.
And your future, well, it's in jeopardy. I remember that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, this is super serious.
Yeah.
And then I like asked my parents, I was like,
nice.
Is it? And they're like, is what? And I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it was because we had in the public school, elementary school, Charles Lindbergh Elementary School, Buffalo, New York. Great
you
place.
Went to Charles Lindbergh. Was
he
he from Buffalo?
No.
Did he fly through Buffalo?
No, it's just one of those American things, like named after grades, you know?
That's cool.
And probably, he was, because he was an American firster and had some other beliefs. But he also flew a plane. I love how when he arrived in Paris, he landed, because we were playing Charles Lindbergh stuff, and all sort of praying. And
Spirit of St. Louis, it's here in D.C.
Yeah, landed, and everyone started like ripping like the plane apart in his clothes and stuff. Because like, I want a piece of this, because like this guy like flew across. And then of course the plane itself, like you can't see out the front. Like he's just looking
out the side?
Or up the top as a periscope.
Get out.
Yeah, amazing.
You serious?
Yeah, guy was, you should read.
I haven't seen the plane. I just know that it's like
totally cool.
Downtown.
Wanted to live forever, was doing the cryogenic stuff.
Did he?
Oh, yeah. He's
really?
the real deal. Charles Lindbergh was one of the greatest Americans alive.
Fascinating.
And he might still be. Who knows? Yeah. But he was, fascinating. So we grew up, anyway, so we had this Charles Lindbergh thing. I can still see it. And so I remember I noticed that something called the environment, because it was like Earth Day. I think it was coming out when I was a boy.
Planted a tree?
And we planted a tree out front or something. We all sang a song maybe, and we made like Earth Day bags and stuff. And there was
like dirt and worms?
No, it was mainly just like drawing with pencils or something, crayons or something. Okay. Yeah. Maybe colored pencils.
I remember colored pencils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
those were around for like 5 seconds. So those are gone, I'm assuming, right?
And then recycling was there. And I remember my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Murphy, she was the only person in the school that didn't have a recycling bin.
Yeah.
And so we were like, where's the recycling bin? And she's like, oh, I didn't know you had to get one of those. And so like we got her a recycling bin. I've never confessed that, and I feel really bad about it. Because like she should have been like, because who cares, right? But because we want heaven to meet earth, I have an announcement.
Nice.
Heaven meets earth one time. Because he wasn't satisfied with having one top 10 podcast.
Nice
our
spacing.
friend Ryan Bethea, producer of The Exorcist Files, launched another podcast that covers miraculous answers to prayers and miracles. and it also hit the top 10. The show features stories of physical healings, miraculous financial provision, changed lives, and even angelic visitations. In fact, in one episode, they have a Protestant share how Mary appeared to her in the hospital to comfort her. I love how the show is helping unite Christians around the miraculous work of the Holy Spirit. Pentecost is coming up.
Let's go.
Probably passed by now.
Definitely
It's
passed.
interviews with Christians from all backgrounds, and our boy Ryan even brought on 2 Catholics to talk about the Rosary in an episode. You can probably guess who those 2 Catholics are.
Neither of us.
There it is. It's going to be harder for you to guess. Check it out. Wherever you get your podcasts, that's Heaven Meets Earth, or head to heavenmeetsearth.com.
Nice.
That's probably www. too.
www.heavenmeetsearth.com.
All right, let's get. So we got Heaven Meets Earth. Let's get back to Earth though. So
Back to Earth Day.
our topic is the Catholic approach to the environment, because I guess there are like two like secular approaches, we could say.
Yeah.
You've got like the one secular approach is like I'm not gonna have children because the environment, the trees deserve help,
First
and
Reformed.
Sacrifice myself. Yeah, exactly. That's a great movie.
I know.
But there it is. And the other approach is like what I had when I was in college. It was like, he said he's gonna burn it all anyway. Right? Like
I love that you said this is going to be a secular approach,
Well-
but your judgment was on the basis of biblical revelation of a great conflagration.
fair enough. It's confusing sometimes, right? When
Let's
you're
say the
Protestant.
approach of like the industrialist who says like, who gives a rip?
Oh,
I'm just going to make some
industrialist.
profits.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like Fern Gully style.
with the pocket
so
watch.
first Reformed and
Yes.
Fern Gully.
First Reformed Fern Gully.
Those
Fantastic.
are most people's notions as to what constitutes their options.
And I suspect if you're listening to this podcast, could be wrong. Could
be
totally
wrong.
not know the audience.
Could not
Very
know the
possible
audience.
to know the audience.
Can't rule it out.
That you're immediately a little concerned about what may be called like eco-justice, or like, well, hold on a
eco-theology.
second, or that kind of stuff. So like maybe situated first, because you've taught a course on this. You teach social justice at the House of Studies.
Yes.
So you're a social justice warrior. Okay,
one
good.
might say.
Yeah, exactly.
Warrior poet. I like to think of myself as a social justice warrior poet.
Yeah. So let's talk about let's open up about at least the environmentalism.
Yes.
And kind of get into this.
Yes. Okay, so we've got ourselves some polarized politics.
Yeah,
Whether they're more or less polarized than the past, no one knows. And there's
And
no
way of knowing.
Exactly. But in a polarized situation, often enough, we just define ourselves and our opinions on the basis of what other people are saying. So it's like, you style yourself as a conservative, you hear the progressives are talking about the environment, and you say like, guess what? I don't give a rip about the environment.
Yeah.
And then you just move on with your little life.
That's true.
Okay. So that's just like how a lot of people operate in the contemporary polarized space. But the idea that the church has set forward for her sons and daughters, at least like in the modern magisterium, is that maybe not so fast. So apropos of the earlier response, maybe not so fast. Maybe there's something here.
Yep.
And maybe we should inquire further. Because
Yeah.
even if the ozone layer has bounded back, and even if we've given up on global warming and have settled for climate change, and even if we don't have a sufficiently large data set to ground any of the things that we've been saying for the past 100 years, maybe there's still grounds for treating the environment with care.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that's a good, caring for the environment. Now the question is, why? Why would we care for the environment?
Yeah.
So maybe walk through some of the secular biblical stuff.
Yeah, sure. So like...
Because the church, we can say, the Catholic has particular teachings about this. You might think, well, did they just make this up? Is this sort of a progressive, sort of Vatican II, post-Vatican II kind of business?
Yeah. So I teach, like you said, the course we call it Catholic Social and Sexual Teaching. So I have like 6 or 7 classes dedicated to Catholic social teaching. And so we set forward the 4/6 principles of Catholic social teaching as they're defined in like the compendium of the Church's social doctrine. And they are dignity of the human person, common good, and then like kind of nested under that as a subordinate principle is universal destination of goods, subsidiarity, nested under that as a subordinate principle is participation, and then solidarity.
Yeah.
And the idea is basically like the church expresses care, concern for people because they are of a quasi-infinite dignity, because they are made to the image and likeness of God and called to communion with Him. Nevertheless, we're social and political animals, so we can't like think about that individual as individual, but we think about him or her as pertaining to a polity in a church, a family polity church, and so we have to think specifically about how to upbuild those relationships, and then that like gets into how we treat property. So like nobody has a strict right to private property in the sense of that you're born with it, but in the sense that God concedes it so that we manage it well and make it proliferate and that we can be of service, universal destination of goods to poor people. Awesome. Subsidiarity, we want our agency engaged in these different intermediate institutions so that way we can build up our life together and the life of the church. And it's good for us each to be engaged in that work, regardless of whether we're especially gifted or not so especially gifted. And that we should, because we're all in this together, should express our peculiar solicitude for those who might be in a tough situation. So like we're all experiencing a common need, but we have a common capacity to work together to common goals and come together in a common life. And so like in the course of this argument, we'll talk specifically about work, and then out of the discussion of work, we get into the environment. Because you think Genesis, we've been set here on the surface of the earth. It's a kind of garden. We're meant to till it, to cultivate it. We're meant to be fruitful and multiply. And this has something to say about how we come to our fullness or how we come to our happiness, come into possession thereof. So there's something about the exercise of our agency in, given the dominion that we have over the earth and over lower creation, whereby to conduct it back to God. So that's just kind of like broad sweep.
I think that's a good place to put the coordinates of it, because you could, I take it the two positions we talked about earlier, Ferngully and First Reformed, could take it that either a rejection of our supremacy or our dominance over creation, or the hyper extension of that sort of thing. So I think generally people think, well, we're just, you see these kind of things, we're just a part of nature, my dad was a tree or whatever. I've never seen that bumper sticker, but here it is. That
here
could
it
be
is.
New Godsplaining quote, my dad is a tree.
Yeah.
And, well, in the cross in a sense, like, okay.
Yeah.
But
we'll come
in
back.
a sense, we're all kind of, we're all part of nature, so of course we have to care about nature and such that, there's some number like one tree is worth like, half a person or something like this, right? We're all the same. We used to think back in the old days that like humans were special, but we're just like we're just different. We're not special in creation, right? And I assume that's a reaction to, I don't think nothing comes from nothing. Smart people are smart. That's a reaction to a hyper-dominant approach, and we talked about the industrialist things, but the sense of man as master, as having dominion over, as being a dominating influence, but not in the sense of dominos, in the sense of lordship, like a lord taking care of things, but rather of like controlling and mastering. Dominator. Exactly. Where who cares, right? Where anything happens, as long as I can like save myself against it. I think we have, and this is, I take it as much as I love the modern project, this is kind of a modern sensibility because I'm totally different than the natural world, right? I have this kind of fundamental, immaterial, special, spiritual, dualistic kind of sense. Like I have total control. The natural world is just something that I can get in there and tweak and fix and all of this.
Yep.
And so you get these two tensions here, and I think that the failure is to go into either side. But I like that care business because care still recognizes that you're such in the right framework of being above, having a hierarchy of actual creatures and our and our dignities, but also a commitment to, like we're responsible as things. In the sense, the environment is, maybe it's like an extension of our bodies in a way, that we have care of our bodies, but it's not the be-all, end-all. The goods of your soul are more important than the goods of your body, right?
Yep.
And nonetheless, your body is something you take care of, right?
Yeah, so I think there are certain principles which some of our contemporaries would find abhorrent, but which are part and parcel of Christian meditation on these themes.
Yes.
So one of which is hierarchy.
Yes.
That certain things are higher and certain things are lower.
Yeah.
Another which is priesthood, in the sense that like a priest is a mediator, and there is a sense in which man, by virtue of his relationship to the environment vis-a-vis God, is a kind of mediator. Not in the sense that like lower creation is like, please offer me, because it's not conscious, at least not conscious in the way that we're conscious.
Yep.
But nevertheless, there is a way in which we're responsible for lower creation in conducting it to the Most High God. So like hierarchy, priesthood, and then this notion of like maybe a lower grade notion of stewardship. It kind of sounds to certain ears like paternalistic,
Stewardship.
But like this idea
That's a
that
Reformed tradition. Reformed tradition talks a lot about being stewards or vice regents.
Oh, nice.
Of creation. So I think that's right.
So I think that like part of the reason why it's hard to broach this issue, and maybe it's not especially hard, but part of the reason for which people don't have a lot of patience for this issue is because it has been co-opted.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's been co-opted in various ways. And there's a narrative for that. So like there was maybe 50 years ago an article published by a guy named Lynn White, which basically said that Christianity of its very nature is anti-environmental. And it was like there are things baked into Christianity and its kind of Greco-Roman, Hebraic understanding of man vis-a-vis God, man vis-a-vis the world, which make it inherently problematic, like his treatment thereof inherently problematic. So he'll focus on like this idea of hierarchy or this notion of dualisms, certain oppositions. And a lot of people in the years since, like 1960, have been responding to that critique, but a lot of people just take it on board.
Sure.
And they say, you're right, And then as a result of which, usually these claims that there need be a new eco-theology are anti-Christian, or at least in the sense that they want to displace certain core values, certain core principles from Christianity so that it can be more ecological. But then the question is like, cart, horse, what's the order?
Well, I think this is a good thing of if you eco-theology, you could take that in two ways, right? One is like we're bringing God down to nature and getting him so that, no, look, we're Christians and we do believe in nature, and the eco is this emphasis. So eco-theology, right? And then we make our theological reflection, which is really just anthropomorphism on speed, attentive to our ecosystem, right? On the other hand, though, I think as Catholics, we're fitted to say, no, we're both and peoples. I think intellectually we're always very frustrated people because it's like, no, I'm with you, like we're for you, right? We're for you, and I mean we have this with Laudato Si, this kind of I think that's the first.
That's the first like full length
committed to it on the full treatment.
But it comes,
obviously we've talked about it. Sure, it's tradition.
Yeah, you can think about how it comes up in Centesimus Annus, how it
Yeah.
comes up in Caritas and Veritate.
But that's a matter of, and I like that. Then, so the eco-theology, it's the theology, right? The theos in the middle of that is mediated between the ecology, right, and the ecosystem, and then the logic of things, right? You have to have, so that God is the drawing things up, and we are trying to make sense of creation in light of God, as opposed to make sense of God in light of creation, or not even creation, but the environment kind of thing. So eco-theology need not be, although it's dangerous, need not be a problem as long as you're attentive to that it's eco-theology.
Yeah.
And then what it might mean. So walk us through some maybe principles of a good eco-theology.
Sure. Yeah, I think like a lot of errors kind of, they give us a sense for, they give us a backdrop to the way in which our own praxis should be shaped or formed. So it's like there's certain things that we're not going to do. One of which is we're not going to like chuck orthodox principles. What we're not doing here is a radical revision.
Yeah.
In the sense that like we wouldn't grant that Christianity is of its nature anti-environmental.
That's right.
There may have been practitioners of Christian life who treated the environment poorly, but
That happens.
we're going to be all right. People do stuff. So I think that like this concern about hierarchies, this concern about dualisms, I think a lot of that, what it has in the background is Marxism, which really only admits matter as a apt principle for description. And so it thinks of things dialectically, push and pull. And so if you're going to foreground the environment, you're going to have to background God and a lot of these people's understandings. And like with radical feminists, if you're going to foreground women, you're going to have to background men. So like a lot of these structures, as it were, of domination fixate on inequalities that arise as a result of differentiation. And so what they're trying to do is equalize, but equalize usually means minimize things of greater importance in the traditional sense, which causes all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So like you'll have the eco-feminists, you have like the panentheists, you have all these people doing all these things, which it's not very important for us to rehearse them, but it does give us a sense of like ways in which the discourse can go wrong.
Yeah.
So like we're for hierarchy insofar as hierarchy is a priesthood in service of what is lower to dignify it and make it unto the higher. And we're for like dualisms of a certain sort, not as oppositions, but of recognition of a just differentiation, which is for, unity or union. And so I think that like, given all those things, obviously, when we talk about eco-theology, we're going to talk first about God.
Yeah, exactly. And what God has given and what he expects, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, first thing we would say, like, that God is radically transcendent.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that, like, God is distant or God doesn't care about creation, but we have to say, like, God plus creation is not greater than God.
Yeah.
Like, God's not making himself better. Like, a lot of these people rely on process theology.
Yep.
God's not, like, spinning himself out. God's transcending.
Yep.
All right? But in transcending, God can be present to his creation, or God is present to his creation more imminently. And so what we have in mind here is, an affirmation of transcendence which affords scope for like a real integrity to creation.
Yep.
So like creation is God's gift, and he's furnished it with its proper natures. He's furnished those natures with their proper principles. And so they have a logic, which logic we gain access to in coming to know God and in coming to know the things themselves.
Yeah. And then, so when we actually look at creation, we look at, because we are creatures, and,
Yep.
and they are creatures, so squirrels and toads and other things like that.
Yep.
Right? And so we
What would a toad sound like?
About that.
Nice.
Yeah, like, that thing has certain dignity,
Yep.
right, Toad? And it's fit into a plan. God cares about these things, cares a lot about oxen, apparently, this kind of stuff. But we don't then assume that the care is equal with us. But yet, at the same time, they are here for particular things. We don't need to worry, we don't, and especially their environments we're talking about, is that like this world, even though you could say, well, it's going away, or we're going to heaven, this kind of business, it is still the kingdom of the earth that we're supposed to be given it time and respect, just like we are to any sort of material, physical thing, as long as it doesn't get in the way of our own flourishing, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But of course, since we're not dualists about this, since we are creatures that exist in an environment and can exist poorly or well in different environments, depending on what it is, that's actually a matter of attending to not the environment qua the environment's sake, right? First and foremost, but the environment qua God's sake and the environment qua our sake.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so I think it's like, okay, so creation is a gift,
Yep.
but it's a gift that's been entrusted to us in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Why? Because we esteem ourselves awesome? No, because we are at the summit of material creation.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you got minerals, you got plants, and you got animals. And then you got us. We live at the horizon of creation.
Yeah.
So we're the meeting of spiritual and bodily, or immaterial and material. And that puts us in a privileged position. That's just good metaphysics, right? That's not anthropocentrism. All right?
Speciesism or something.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like we are invested, we're bound up with the material world, and we exercise some kind of responsibility over it because we're the only ones that can know our end as an end and pursue it under that rubric. So vis-a-vis creation, I mean, when we talk about creation, we're just talking about the gift.
Yep.
All right. We're responsible for receiving it. Not in that we have a choice. Metaphysically speaking, it's given, period. But we can be more or less willingly from God and for God.
Yeah. And we don't want to break it. That's
Yeah.
the sense of like, if someone gives you a gift, you have responsibility to actually do something with it. It's not like, oh, look, you gave me that gift, smash it, because it's, I can do whatever I want with it. Didn't you give it to me? Because it represents more than just that sort of thing, transactional matter, but rather it's a sign and a token of love. And I take it that's what creation is. It's everything that comes from God's love that exists, right? So therefore, it's a token of His love that's meant to be taken care of and of respect in this sort of way. So not only for us, but also from Him in our relationship, such that when we do not attend correctly to the environment, we are not attending also to our relationship with Him, right?
Yep.
I think there's a matter how does that work out? When I think about it, I think about something like ingratitude, right? If I'm attending, so I think of what are the things I don't do when I'm not taking care of the environment. Well, I'm not like nuking anything, but like
Not today.
when I'm just being cavalier about, I'm very attentive to this in the house. Like we have some paper cups and you have like mugs or something. Let's assume that paper cups are that the power involved in washing a mug is much less than the power involved in recycling a paper cup or something. But I want my convenience kind of stuff, so I just grab a paper cup and wander around sometimes. And I'm very attentive to know, just take the ceramic cups because it's less of a burden on the current space you have, the gifts you've been given, and you can, I can tolerate that. Like I can be attentive to that sort of thing. So it's those aren't big things. I take it that we're not doing. Like make sure you always reuse your plastic forks or something. But to me, it's a matter of like, is this place for me? Is this universe for me entirely? Or am I set in a context of I'm between, as you say, this priesthood mediation between God and everything else under me, right? And so I ask myself questions like, do I just subordinate everything under me to my own will and forget about Him? Or do I attend to trying to keep everything in order, in a proper order? And that doesn't mean big changes, but it does mean we're attentive to these things. And you make little changes as you go along. They turn out to be sizable. But give me some, since we've got
You're fine.
Well, we're heading on we still got some time here. But what do you think about how we go about practicing as Catholics, as Christians, a reasonable sense of stewardship, as you say, without freaking out and worrying that this is going to lead us down the slippery slope of like eco-Marxism or something, right?
Yeah.
Have we just given in to the culture that around us? Shouldn't we stick hold our ground and attend to God's supremacy? Like, are we giving in any way in this kind of way, in this area?
Yeah, as I see it, we've got perfection, consumption, and contemplation. as the kind of finality of our engagement with the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So perfection, like each thing has its proper perfection. Yeah. Rocks do well to be rocky, and plants do well to be planty, and animals do well to be animally. And that we can exercise a certain stewardship over each aspect of creation in helping it to fulfill its nature.
Yeah.
You know, so like the way in which we protect endangered species. You know, it's like, well, it's good that these things exist. Maybe they ought to keep existing. So that's going to govern some of the ways in which we interact with our environment. Mm-hmm. But there's also a sense in which like that perfection is also to be had in coordination with higher creation. So the lower is for the higher. Mm-hmm. And then that gets us into consumption, not just like, I'm going to consume everything because I have a right to all of it.
Yeah.
You know, so like the Lord's is the earth and its fullness, but he's entrusted it to our care. He's set us over the garden to cultivate it. Mm-hmm. And so like you can, you know, respect stones and their stoniness, or you can also put them in the facade of a cathedral. That's a use of them. That's a kind of consumption of them. Obviously, they're not broken down by it. They might be exposed to weathering and erosion more on the facade of a cathedral than they would be in the bottom of their quarry. Nevertheless, like there's ways in which we can profitably interact with it. So there's a teleology whereby we can bring creation to its perfection. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of people... Creation as a whole, or creatures and creation. That's not something that a lot of people think about.
Yeah.
But like we are living stones. We're meant to be sent into spiritual edifice. And if that's true of us, then what about the dead? I mean, those too have a kind of way in which they can be beautified and beatified. Obviously, we're speaking metaphorically.
Integrated into a higher sense. Yes, that's right.
So the point isn't to just leave things alone, to consume as little as possible, to reduce our carbon footprint. I mean, there's part of that which is responsible use and responsible interaction, not just for the human community at present, but for human community in the future. And the modern magisterium stresses that, you know, this idea of democracy of the dead, but also democracy of the not yet living.
Yeah.
But then this like final piece is like, all right, this is all also addressed to us for our beatification, not just at the level of their perfection, our consumption, but at the level of contemplation. Because when we consider creation, like creatures in their ecosystematic harmony, it's meant to direct our gaze ultimately to God. Because that brings us back to the first point. This is a gift. We're meant to receive it. And the logic of it is actually intelligible. Well, it's potentially intelligible, but it becomes actually intelligible in our cognizing. That's an overly complicated way of saying God means to impress us with the manifest testimony of his glory in creation, and that these things, in a certain sense, fulfill their purpose as cognized intelligently by humans who exercise their priesthood in the rational order. So, like, we're meant to marvel at creation.
Yeah, I think this is a good point about spaces and keeping natural environments or something, even small little gardens or flowers, and because there's a sense in which nature seems to adduce a wonderment because of its inner workings, I think, because the teleology, because things like grow towards, they develop, this kind of, they have an end, this kind of, if I was thinking about this, whereas, say, concrete jungle or like brutalist architecture, which I love modern brutalist architecture, but it's really, it directs one's mind to man, I think, more than, say, like, something about pastoral scenes, landscapes, greens. I mean, it's not just a matter of rest, right? So Central Park, for instance, think in New York, like Central Park is very important to keep it natural, such that a place of rest for those who are busy in the rest of the, heat-inflamed glass, jungle over there. It's just so hot in that city in the summer.
Let's call it a kiln.
A kiln, right? Just baking us and baking money. And so, but like Central Park, having these sort of parks, money pottery, having parks and having nature, having like just even simple lawns, something like trees are not just materially good in the sense of providing oxygen or like providing us like some sort of psychological rest or something. But as you say, a place of drawing us into thinking about nature as heading towards something. I think it's privileged moments of contemplation in a way that the mechanization of modern cities and our kind of like utilitarian architecture doesn't allow us for that. So for Catholics, part of being attentive to the environment is giving us still kind of quasi-sacramental or sign things that remind us that things are gifted and things are going somewhere, and that he cares about us, and we are to care for this in a similar way, right? Yeah. Is there anything else before we turn off here on what turn off TV?
Yeah, exactly.
That you would like, because you've thought about this more than I have, certainly, since the conflagration insight. Like insight to like why, any practical or thoughts or how we get to thinking about, as Catholics, not going overboard and thinking about all of a sudden, okay, this, but also being attentive to the fact that, this is a great gift and a great grace and gives us a chance for gratitude and for contemplation.
Yeah. I think the last thing that I'd say is that we can think about this as a way in which to grow, right? This is about the exercise of our agency. It's about the kind of maturation of our stewardship, like the exercise of dominion or stewardship over creation and the priesthood whereby we refer all things and restore all things in Christ unto God. Because if it's just like, reduce your carbon footprint, we find it very hard to verify whether there are appreciable gains from a little creature doing a little thing on the surface of a big earth. But if we can think about it more so in terms of our own exercise of agency, it's not so much a matter of like the damage that it does, although that's part of the story. It's more so about the wounds that we can inflict on ourselves by being cavalier or by being dismissive or by being the type of person who defines himself by negative criteria and just says, not like those people, not like those people, don't give a rip, don't give a care. So there are things in our treatment of the environment which make us treat people poorly.
Yeah.
And we want to think ultimately about how we treat people and how we treat them unto God, and that our environment it's part of that story. The way in which we engage with it is part of that story because it's taken in the broad sweep of the exercise of our human agency. So
yeah, I like that. That's a good point. Creation as a gift, that we attend to it such that if we attend to it as a gift, then we can't help but think about the giver. And we are, unlike the stone concrete jungle, we are not the givers of nature.
Yeah.
Not yet.
I have one last thought, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. This came up first in John Paul II, repeated by Benedict XVI, and then echoed in Francis, but this notion of a human ecology.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So it's like ecology taken on its own terms, abstracting from the human question, is incomplete because you can't really understand lower creation. I mean, like zoologists and botanists can understand it under a certain perspective or, objectivity, but it's meant to be taken within the more broadly, kind of broadly ranging or larger narrative. So it's like this idea of a human ecology is that ecology is for man, man's for God. And so within the hierarchy, despite the apparent dualisms, we get an integrated vision, which is in fact much healthier and hopefully holier.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, well, Earth Day.
Earth Day, indeed. Hug a tree.
Indeed. Hug
2 trees.
Hug 2 trees, yeah, why not? Well, thanks for hugging trees with us. On tuning into this episode of Godsplaining. Please like and subscribe to this episode. Share it with friends if this has been around the time of Earth Day. I don't know if it is, whatever.
I don't even know when Earth Day is.
No idea either.
April,
we don't,
maybe?
Yeah, whatever. Please, if you'd like to make a donation to us on Patreon, you can become a monthly donator to Patreon.
Donator et Dominator.
Yeah, and you can also look at godsplaining.com for information about upcoming events, retreats, stuff, merchandise, all of this. But I have an announcement because in September you can also find something there. It's called the Dominican Rosary Pilgrimage.
Nailed it.
This is a great event at some time in September. Any dates? 29th?
September 27th.
27th. December 27th. You come. It'll be at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, so right across from D House. And there'll be conferences, multiple languages, conferences in multiple languages. There'll be rosary in multiple languages. There'll be a lot of languages here. After praying the rosary and the conferences and the masses and all of this stuff. Have we mentioned conferences yet?
Yeah.
There's also going to be a concert with the Hillbilly Thomas.
Get out.
So Father Gregory, is there anything else I need to say about this?
There'll be a toddler what do you call it? Mosh pit at the concert?
Toddler mosh pit at the concert. Fantastic.
There'll be like 5 to 9-year-olds absolutely losing their minds.
There it is.
Within close proximity.
There it is. So Dominican Rosary Pilgrimage 2025, September 27th, from the morning until the evening.
Nailed it.
Okay, that's great. So thanks for tuning in again. We hope to see you there. Please pray for us. We'll be praying for you, and we'll catch you next time on Godsplaining.
Father Bonaventure, would you prefer to have a bearded dragon or a chameleon?
Bearded dragon.
All right. Would you prefer that bearded dragon be 2 feet long or 4 feet long?
A chameleon.
Would you prefer that your chameleonic bearded dragon be in a tank or roaming free in your room?
Subscribing to Godsplaining.